I am once again Siobhan Fagan, Managing Editor, sometimes English speaker, and it is now my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Alan Porter. He is the Director of Product Marketing at Nuxeo, and I will say take it away, Alan.
Thank you, Siobhan. It's a pleasure to be back, and it's always a pleasure to be working with CMSWire, whether that's writing the somewhat monthly articles I contribute, or participating in these webinars. They're always a fun activity and a great exercise to be involved with. So I'm delighted to be back working with CMSWire for this webinar today. And thank you for the great intro. So I want to sort of start off by talking a bit about the past to talk about the future. The title of this webinar is CX in 2021. Obviously, as we're at the early part of 2021, what we're talking about is really what's happening, what's coming up this year. But I want to sort of take a step back to the past, where growing up, I always loved science fiction. Well, I actually still do love science fiction, from TV shows to movies to the books and comics I read. I spent a fair proportion of my life really thinking about the future and the future we're going to get. And it was something I was really looking forward to. In fact, my first job out of college was working on Concorde. And while we were working on that, we were certainly planning on there being more supersonic airplanes flying around. And I even was lucky enough to be involved in a hypersonic space plane project. Seems I'm having language difficulties as well as Siobhan. But neither of those things really happened. We don't have supersonic planes flying around, and we don't have space planes jumping us from New York to Sydney in 15 minutes or whatever it was we were going to go do. So, what happened? Why did that future not happen? The thing is, I think we're actually are living in a really fantastic future, but it was just one that nobody really thought about or could predict. We've got we're living in a digital world, microprocessors, computing power, computers everywhere. We always thought computers were going to stay being these big things in specialized rooms that maybe companies had one or two. Not that we'd all be walking around with a device in our pocket that has more computing power than took us to the moon, that it connects us to the greatest repository of human knowledge in history, the libraries that we use to watch TV, take photographs, and even occasionally make a phone call on. Nobody could predict the smartphone, yet in 10 years it has literally changed the way that we work. It's changed the way that we live our lives, coupled with the web and the fact that we can talk to each other online and over platforms such as this one. It completely changed the way we work. Nobody really saw that coming. But so what's that sort of meant for us more recently? Well, sort of more recently, I think sort of the last 10 to 12 months has really proved the fact that it doesn't matter how much we predict, what we think about, how we think about technology, how clever we think we are at predicting future trends. Reality has a really nasty habit of getting in the way of those things, and it can really throw us a curveball. I think really, over the last, as I said, sort of 10 to 12 months, we've had one heck of a curveball thrown our way. So what does that sort of mean for a customer experience if really, the futures that we wanted to predict don't really happen, be they long-term, even the short-term things can actually get derailed very quickly? What can we do? Well, one of the things we need to really think about is looking at what's happening around us, looking at the shifting patterns for both businesses and consumers. Certainly from a customer experience point of view, we've now moved to this current environment where a greater proportion of people are working remotely, and we continue to build reliance on digital experiences and the needs for the systems to support that and to really enable that business continuity and growth to continue even through a difficult period. I heard an interesting quote this morning that somebody suggested that when we get through everything that's going on at the moment, it's going to be like we suddenly jumped to 2030. In the fact that a lot of the technology that was sort of we were thinking about where we would be in 2030, we're actually accelerating things because of the shifting patterns in the way that we work. That's going to really impact us going forward. There's going to be things we're going to look back at and think, did we really do it that way? And really, maybe even as in 4 to 5 years, again, the business environment, the customer environment, the way we do things could be completely different, particularly when we start thinking about things like the impact of AI and digital transformation and some of the things that we're going to talk about going forward. So, if we think about sort of 2020 really as a year of reaction to what was going on, all these shifting patterns, having to change the way we work, having to change the way that we think about things, having to change the way that we do business. What's 2021 going to be? Well, again, sort of trying to not put too much forward thinking on it, but actually trying to be realistic. I believe that 2021, we won't get our jetpacks and we won't get our rocket ships and we won't get our hovercrafts. But, I think it will be a year of really consolidating the changes that we've been through over the last 10 to 12 months, taking a time to step back and look at what we've done, where we've had success, where we haven't, figure out how we can use the assets that we already have to deliver even better experiences for our customers going forward. When you think about it, the digital experience really has become the face of any company. The online experience has become the face of any company. It's the companies that have succeeded over the last 10, 12 months are the ones that have really adopted digital technology, the ones that have realized that the differentiator is not necessarily the product, but the way that they deliver the product, the way they talk about their products, the way that they actually embrace their customers, work with their customers, and understand their customers and build community around that. And I think centered to that is also delivering really good content that is relevant, has the right context and the right meaning, and actually helps their customers solve their problems and solve their issues as they're going forward, and helping them adjust to new ways of working. So I really believe that 2021 is going to be, as I said, if 2020 was a year of reacting to what was going on, I think 2021 is going to be a year of us not immediately jumping to the new normal, to use a now common phrase, but actually a year of us thinking about what that acceleration means for us, what it means for us as a business, and how we can take stock of what we've already got and what we've done, and how we can use that to continue to deliver better experiences and position ourselves for that accelerated final endpoint once we actually get back to whatever is going to become a regular business environment. So in terms of sort of what that means for 2021, I really think that taking that step back and looking at what we can do, I see for sort of 5 trends in customer experience going forward. I think, one of the first things we've got to do is look at doing the basics better. Secondly, look at, as I said, look at the assets we've got, provide more rich media, dig into the assets that we've got in our archives, look at different ways of doing them, increasing the use of 3D, and actually to start thinking about audio as well. And obviously we'll talk a bit more about each of these in detail. So doing the basics better, as I said, more and more companies are really realizing that the digital experience has become the prime interface between them and their customers. And what we're seeing really is a growing desire for people to take a more holistic view to the customer experience. Traditionally, the customer experience is either a marketing function or occasionally a post-sales function, but really the customer experience is every interaction with the company, irrespective of where it happens along the customer journey, from building awareness to finding out about a product, buying a product, shipping a product, invoicing it, what the packaging looks like, how do you get it to the customer, particularly where we're in a sort of no contact environment. What are the logistics of doing that? What's it like when they unpackage it? What's it like when they want to start using it? What's the response like if they've got a problem? How do we resolve that? How can we use things like chatbots and audio and websites and AI to help with that sort of thing? Can we deliver the right information at the right time in the right context to help solve those issues? So really, I'm seeing more and more companies who really want to connect the data across their customer experience. They're not looking at one particular system to be the customer experience system. They're not relying on one particular environment to drive that whole customer experience. They're actually looking to connect things like product information to the customer information, to the customer's data, to their account information, and making sure that that flows across every single point of the customer data flow across the organization. So I think before we start looking at, what whizzy new technologies coming and how can we use it, and how can we go and do some fancy new things, what we really need to do, and I see a lot of companies doing, as I said, is taking what they've done to survive and then taking a look at that and figuring out what works, figuring out what doesn't work, and then building this more holistic view around it and building a better basic system to start actually improving the customer experience with the technology and the assets that they've got, before they start looking at throwing new technology and new ideas out there. So I think really doing the basics better is going to provide a really good foundation for a year of consolidation moving forward. I sort of talked about using the assets. One of the things that, if you talk to a lot of folks in marketing, they already know that really good imagery and video drives engagement and produces more conversations and more engagement than any other type of content. And we're living in a rich media world. More and more people want to interact with things in a media-rich environment. So that's through things like good imagery, good photography, relevant imagery and photography that actually engages to the customer, has the right context, understands who the customer is, understands about the product, and has the correct metadata around it, has the correct information, is connected to other systems like the product system, so you can make sure that when something gets onto your e-commerce platform, you've got a picture of the right product with the right product information, and knowing that those colors are available or those materials are available in any particular market. Same with video. More and more people are engaging through video. You just got to look at the rise of, platforms with like TikTok with the short video segments becoming more and more popular. YouTube, second most popular search platform. People looking for videos. The amount of companies and people that are doing things like unboxing videos or helping you how to fix something. Videos. So really, rich imagery is really becoming. It was already very important in the customer experience, but in 2021, I see it becoming even more experienced. Taking a look at how we can use rich media, imagery, video to really help drive a really good customer experience across every single delivery channel. Customers are really interacting with portals that provide content that's timely, relevant, and consistent across all the delivery channels, and using your rich media is a great way to do that. Really employing relevant rich media at different points of the customer journey is really a key part of the developing customer experience going forward. And one way to do that, some of the pushback against using rich media may be, we can't do photo shoots at the moment. We can't go out and do photo shoots and video shoots. But if you actually look at what's happening, lots of companies are really digging back into it. They're either doing two things. They're either digging back into their archives, or they're actually transitioning to doing a lot of the production work, and things that were traditionally done in studios are being done remotely by teams. We're seeing whole TV shows created where all the post-production is being done by people working from home. We're seeing even TV shows just created in a lockdown environment. So, things are shifting, but actually also one of the things that we're seeing more and more companies is digging into their archives, looking at what they've actually already got and seeing how they can use it. And then using technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning to really mine those catalogs of rich media assets they can go. So they can go through and look at their content archives, look at the thousands and thousands of images that they may have produced over the years, and cataloging them and tagging them at scale and with speed and accuracy that they couldn't do before. Actually making their subject matter experts part of that human in the loop type thing, where they're actually using their subject matter experts to help train machine learning and AI to dive in and dig those things. A great example fairly recently was Nike did an excellent video when all the sports were on shutdown about how sports will be back. They went back I think it was through 4,000 hours of video and spliced together excellently edited 3-minute video on how sports are important and how sports are going to be back. They didn't need to go out and create any new content. They leveraged what they had, but they still produced something that was very on brand, very inspirational, very timely, very relevant, and a message that really resonated with an excellent video. So there are other examples. Just a couple of a Nuxeo client who's a cosmetics company, and they have a big anniversary coming up. So they're digging back and looking at what they've done in the past, helping to build interest in that around the history of the company and so forth by digging into their archives. Going back, they've got discovered that they actually have old ads from the 1960s with some very iconic movie stars in them that they can then get the rights to reuse those and so forth. So we're seeing a lot of companies really looking at what they've already got, seeing how they can manipulate it and leverage it better, and using technologies like AI, machine learning, to really help go in and mine that information at scale and speed and accuracy that they couldn't have done previously just by using human librarians or search facilities. So, I really think it will really help with the delivery of the rich media by taking, as I said, that consolidated, taking that step back and looking at what we've got, and then how can we use it in more interesting, innovative ways going forward. And I think actually, sort of talking of innovation, I think one of the things that we're really seeing is an increased use of 3D. One of the things that customer experience, the one area of customer experience that's really difficult to replicate is that in-house ability, that retail environment ability to actually hold the product, feel the weight of it, feel what it looks, its texture, find out what the shape is. There's no real way to replicate that online. But what we can do online is at least show things like a 360 view. Look at, traditionally when we used to go online and look at pictures in a catalog, it would maybe be a 3/4 view shot and it was static and we couldn't really do it. You could look at it, but that was it. You couldn't really see what it looked like all around. And we're seeing a vast increase in use of 3D from everything from people that making sneaker manufacturers to heavy equipment, construction equipment manufacturers to car companies doing virtual showrooms, to all sorts of people doing, like, as we talked about, unboxing videos, 360 spins, fully rendered 3D files, even doing virtual promotional boxes and using AR. There's a couple of toy companies that are already using augmented reality, so you can actually see what a piece looks like when it's completed. So we're seeing more and more use of 3D going forward, and I think that we'll continue to see that going forward as 3D rendering gets cheaper and easier, and 3D display gets cheaper and easier, and people start thinking in terms of, again, connecting their product files to their marketing and their customer support. So if you think about, doing virtual design in 3D, there's probably lots of 3D files of a product going around within a company, which traditionally has sort of stayed within the design environment, but by moving it down the content supply chain and moving it into things like packaging design, as I said, campaign marketing, customer support, knowledge bases, websites and apps and so forth, where people and customers can actually start to look at it and get more of that feel, not get 100% replication of the in-store environment, but at least start to get a better view of the product and an understanding of a product. And again, it also helps with service and things like that. If you can do 360 spins, figure out where people are having issues or where things are working and where they're not. So I think we're going to see a lot more use of 3D going forward. And then lastly, I think one area that I'm a big believer in is that audio is going to become more and more important. I talked at the beginning about trying to predict the future. I do remember when we first started talking about audio processing and the ability to talk to our computers. We thought the use case was going to be dictation, that we weren't going to have to write memos or anything anymore, that we could just talk to our computers and it would, type things out. And sure enough, there is dictation software, there is voice analytics software that will take the spoken word and write it out. But that's ended up not being the prime use case. The prime use case for audio processing really has become that audio is becoming the new user interface. I talk to Siri every morning. Probably talk to Siri before I talk to my wife each morning, just asking what the weather's like before I go and walk the dog. Audio processes in my car help me, make a phone call while I'm driving, or navigation, ask for navigation tips in the car. Audio, helps select the music I listen to. Writes text to my kids. I firmly believe that probably my two granddaughters, who are sort of 3 and 5. Actually, I'm going to get in trouble because the youngest is 4 next week. So, but my 2 youngest granddaughters, I firmly believe that they'll probably grow up and not touch a keyboard in the way that we understand touching a keyboard, of typing out commands and so forth. I think, their primary user interface as they grow up, and it already is going to be the audio. They already both talk to Siri. They ask Siri things. They've done that since pretty much they could walk and talk. And I think that's where things are going to go. And I think really, if you're not already developing an audio content strategy, you should be doing it now. You should be thinking about it, because I really think we're going to get a fast development of audio interfaces over the next few years. I think, and a lot of these types of interfaces are becoming the initial touch point of the customer journey, where people ask questions. And a lot of companies do not have content that actually can be delivered in a way that makes audio useful. It needs to be thought about and engineered, and the content engineered and stored and managed with the right metadata and the right context around it, so you can actually pick the pieces that you need to develop those conversations. I think we're going to move from being passive consumers of a lot of our content into actually having conversations with our content. And we need to start thinking about that now, and start thinking about engineering the content and putting an audio content strategy together as to how we're going to use that. So I actually think in 2021, we're going to see even more of these types of audio interfaces coming online, and more types of using AI to help with that and actually do predictive answering and helping deliver the right sort of content and information that people need based on that audio input. So those are sort of my 5 trends that I see coming this year. As I said, I think if 2020 was a year of reacting to what was going on and really throwing all our plans and ideas of what the future was going to hold out of the window, I think 2021 is really going to be a year of consolidating, looking at what's happened, looking at what worked, what didn't, looking at the trends, looking at where things are going, and extrapolating from that. And I think it really is going to come down to those 5 areas that I talked about doing the basics better to create a good foundation, delivering more rich media. People want imagery, they want video, it drives more conversations, it drives more interactions. Digging into the archives of what you already have, using technology like machine learning and AI to help really add value to that and add context to that. Increasing the use of 3D to really give some of that feel that we can't replicate online, but we can get close to it in terms of actually giving people a full view of a product and engaging with it. And as I said, audio as well. I think it all really comes down to connecting the data and taking that holistic viewpoint I talked about earlier of connecting your product data and your business systems data with your customer data, and making sure that you take that holistic view of the customer experience. So where does Nuxeo sort of fit into that? Well, Nuxeo has a content services platform which as a enterprise digital asset management system really places those rich media assets that we talked about right at the center of the digital supply chain. It moves those rich media assets from just being something that the marketing department has and delivers to actually being a foundation of the content supply chain across the organization, connecting the content, the data, and the assets across the organization, and making sure that you can use that to deliver those exceptional customer experiences that we all want to. But really it comes down to two things: connecting your data to your content sources and making sure that that flows across the products and the customer life cycle. That helps drive a collaborative environment, which again in the new workplace really helps. Make sure things are consistent, and it helps you get your messages to the market a lot quicker because you're all speaking the same language, and you get a much more improved data flow across the organization, and really helps create a digital life cycle that adds value to the content and improves the overall customer experience. So I think that's the end of the slides, the presentation. I hope you found that useful. I hope that gave you some points to think about and a good roadmap of where we think things are going in 2021.